Dee, Salaam alaikum. Welcome, Teachers for Palestine, to our webinar tonight with Salah Hijazi from the Boycott, Divest, Sanction movement. Salah Hijazi is the policy coordinator with the National Committee, and we are really privileged tonight. Salah is actually speaking to us from Ramallah in beautiful Palestine. And just for those of you who are all around Ireland and maybe outside of Ireland, we want to wish him, as we say in our language, Kate Míle Fáilte, 100,000 welcome, Salah. BDS, Boycott, Divest, Sanction, is a Palestinian movement inspired by the South African anti-apartheid struggle and its grassroots Palestinian-led, anti-racist, non-violent form of protest and resistance. So in the second part of tonight, Salah will be speaking about apartheid-free zones in the context of BDS. So Salah, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for Teachers for Palestine for having me. It's always, I always say this when talking to Irish family is that there's this special closeness and connection, I guess, that is always makes us comfortable and happy to be with you and to be speaking with you, and to struggle as well together. So just maybe as a way to kind of ease into what I want to say about BDS and apartheid-free zones is, as an introduction, my name is Salah Hijazi. I'm a Palestinian, born and raised in Jerusalem, or the Jerusalem-Ramallah area. I'm a father of two boys who are 6 and 8. And I thought maybe it's good to start to kind of like describe to the listeners and the audience watching where I'm speaking from. The exact place where I'm speaking from, my home here, and in a way to kind of describe the apartheid reality that Israel imposes on us. And here in the West Bank, we are at the heart of Israel's apartheid regime. Around me, if I look from the window here or from the other window there are settlements surrounding my neighborhood. These are illegal Israeli colonies. They're Jewish-only colonies. They're connected by roads, including to Israel, that I and other Palestinians are not allowed to use. They take, steal land and expand more of this land, a land that we're not able to access. Farmers around in the villages nearby, these are their lands. They're not allowed to farm it. They actually put their lives in danger. If they do, people from nearby villages, including children, have been killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers when they try to protect their lands from being stolen by these Israeli settlements. Nearby, there are 2 water springs that have also been taken by the illegal settlers, and we as Palestinians are not allowed to use. And this is all just around me, what I'm describing. And I think water is another issue that really speaks to the meaning of apartheid. Water is a real crisis for Palestinians in the West Bank. We get water only 1 time a week, if that. We have usually, and this is something that kind of identifies Palestinian homes, are these water tanks on top of the roofs, because we need to use that 1 day to store the water so that we're able to use it for the rest of the day. Compared to the settlers who get 7 to 9 times as much water as we do. And this is, of course, water that is ours, that was stolen. In summertime, this crisis gets even worse, where we have to buy water to be delivered to us by kind of tanks that is barely enough for the people who are around. The system here is that of a hierarchy of where Jewish supremacy is enshrined in law. At the top of this hierarchy are Jewish Israelis. Below them are Israeli citizens of Israel, particularly from the minorities of Druze and Caucasians who serve in the Israeli army. There's a mandatory for them to serve in the army, but they don't enjoy the full spectrum of rights as Jewish Israelis do. Then come people like myself, who are Palestinian citizens of Israel. That gives me a bit more rights and privileges than, for example, my partner, who is a resident of the West Bank. And I always mention this to also kind of give a feeling of what apartheid is, because it's not only the discrimination against Palestinians, the segregation between Jewish Israelis, the colonizers, and the Palestinians, the indigenous, but there is also the segregation and separation of Palestinians themselves, that me and my partner are treated differently. There are some roads and checkpoints that I can cross that she cannot. I can, for example, take our children to go to the beach in Jaffa or Haifa, but she cannot, is not allowed to cross these checkpoints. We have family in Jerusalem that I can go and visit with my children, but my wife is not allowed. If we are to leave the country, she has to go through Jordan while I can travel through the airport. And there are various other these differences in terms of kind of the rights and so on. And it's always, and I think particularly, you know, as I'm speaking to parents and teachers, it's extremely difficult to explain to our young children why their mother is not able to travel in the same car, on the same roads, to cross the same checkpoints, to see our joint family together. Uh, we believe that we try to get the picture across, but the questions keep coming. And every time we have to do this, it seems like a challenge and a huge obstacle for us to try to get this picture across, although, of course, the children do live the reality very much. This is kind of like the place, right? Now, speaking just briefly about the time, uh, what is the time now? And the time is that this apartheid regime that dispossesses, that fragments, that separates, that treats Palestinians as subhumans in our own homeland is carrying out the first live stream genocide against 2.3 million Palestinians who are in the besieged and occupied Gaza Strip. A relentless genocide that has been going on for over 19 months now. Over 52,000 Palestinians, vast majority of them are women and children, have been killed by Israel's bombing. The vast majority of homes and civilian infrastructure has been devastated intentionally by the Israeli army. As we speak right now, just earlier today, the Palestinian Authority government has declared that there is a famine in Gaza because Israel has been preventing essentials like food and medicine from entering for many weeks right now. Those who are in a weaker state, like, for example, in the hospital, those who are sick, the children, some of them have started dying because of this enforced famine. There is a systematic mass detention of Palestinians, whether it is here in the West Bank or Gaza, systematic torture, including sexual abuse and so on and so forth. We, as Palestinians, are living the darkest, most challenging, and most difficult times since the establishment of Israel's settler colonial apartheid regime in 1948. Next week, we'll be commemorating in Nakba. This is the time around the establishment of the State of Israel, where Zionist militias and later the Israeli army massacred and forcibly displaced the vast majority of Palestinians from our homeland. This Nakba is ongoing, and it's taken its most brutalist, most oppressive form yet with the genocide in Gaza. I say words like apartheid and genocide, and I think it is important to note that these are crimes under international law, and the highest judicial body of the world, the International Court of Justice, has itself confirmed that Israel is plausibly committing genocide in Gaza and ordered it to stop all and any forms of genocidal acts under the Genocide Convention. The International Court of Justice also, in another ruling, found that Israel is guilty of apartheid and racial segregation under international law. It also found that its occupation, the illegal military occupation, and the settlements under which I live are also illegal and should end as rapidly as possible. And I mentioned the ICJ because there's another important factor that I want to link into then speaking about the BDS. These determinations by the highest judicial body in the world has not only described what is happening to us, Palestinians, in our homeland, Palestine, as genocide and apartheid and illegal occupation, but has also laid out what are the responsibilities of other states around the world, including Ireland, for example, towards this situation. That third states, such as Ireland, have obligations not to recognize the illegal situation and crime or criminal systems that Israel is imposing on Palestinians, such as apartheid and illegal occupation. And they have an obligation not to render aid or assistance to the commission of the crime of genocide or the commission of the crime of apartheid and other violations under international law. And I say this because our movement, the BDS, is grounded in international law, particularly working on ensuring that these obligations by third states like Ireland and by international organizations are upheld, because this is the only way to ensure that these systematic crimes do end, are never repeated again. BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. It is a call that came out from Palestinian civil society in 2005, 20 years ago, to boycott Israel, divest from Israel, and impose sanctions against Israel until it complies with international law, ends its regime of apartheid, illegal occupation, and as a prerequisite for Palestinians to enjoy the inalienable rights to self-determination and the right of Palestinian refugees who've been forcibly displaced from their homes to return home. It is, as Michelle was describing in the beginning, a global nonviolent movement, Palestinian-led, that upholds anti-racism and anti-discrimination at the heart of its identity, and devises different strategies, and I'll come to this, to ensure that Israel is held accountable for the crimes it is committing. The basic premise of the movement is that only through people power, from the building of the grassroots, that we are able to exact the structural changes towards justice, freedom, and equality that we all want to see. The strategies are, and basically it would perhaps be helpful to kind of deconstruct the acronym BDS. So boycotts are campaigns led by people joining unions, civil society organizations all around the world to boycott Israel and Israeli companies and Israeli products, but also, and this is very important, to boycott companies that are complicit in Israel's crimes. Israel is only able to carry out a live stream genocide unhinged and without any obstacles after 77 years of settler colonial apartheid only because of the complicity of states, institutions, and corporations around the world. Without this complicity, Israel would not be able to do this. Boycott, divestment, and sanction is a popular grassroots, if you want, people form of accountability to hold Israel accountable, especially when states and international organizations are not doing so. What the BDS highlights and targets is the complicity, and what it calls on people to do is to look locally where they are and to see if in any of their dealings, consumer habits, contracts, relations, they are contributing to the crimes that Israel is committing against the Palestinian people. So the boycotts target companies on a criteria that includes the complicity in Israel's crimes, the winnability of these campaigns, the intersectionality of this campaign with other struggles for freedom, justice, and equality, and the long-term effect that this campaign may have. Some of the campaigns, just to highlight, that I think are very relevant to Ireland are the campaign to boycott HP, for example, the tech and computer company, where you may see a lot of the laptops and printers and so on in different places, including at schools. And the reason why we call for the boycott of HP is because it is complicit in Israel's apartheid system. It maintains the databases and other forms of technology that allow Israel to maintain a database of Palestinians, to then segregate, separate, and violently control. This includes also tech support that this company provides to Israeli authorities that run Israeli prisons, that hold thousands of Palestinians, including children, many of whom are held as political prisoners and many of whom are held without charge or trial. Because of this complicity, we have devised a campaign to boycott HP, and we ask individuals, but also institutions such as schools, municipalities, universities, companies, and so on, not to buy from HP and not to sign contracts with HP because of this complicity. And this is a way to make the company pay for the role that it has played in supporting Israel's apartheid system against the Palestinians. So B is for boycott. Is these campaigns, it could be consumer campaigns, economic boycott campaigns. These are actions that can be taken by individuals. They can be taken as groups. They're better if they're organized. They're more impactful and powerful. But they also can be done at a much larger scale. The D stands for divestment, and this is where we work to expose the complicity of companies, but also funds and university funds, including university funds, that invest in Israel or in Israeli companies that then provide a line of very essential support for Israel to be able to maintain its system of apartheid and now carry out genocide. By exposing this complicity is a form of pressure, but we also will work to advocate with, again, it could be schools, universities, and so on, not to contract any of the companies that have investments in Israeli companies or in Israel itself, like Israel bonds, for example. And sometimes we devise shareholder tactics as well to ensure that these companies are held accountable and they eventually divest from Israel. Sanctions, the last letter in the acronym is the S, and stands for sanction, and that relates to government. It is building pressure from below, from people, on governments to ensure that they hold their obligations under international law. And I've outlined the obligations, which are not to recognize Israel's illegal situation, that of apartheid and illegal occupation, but also not to render any aid or assistance to Israel in commissioning these crimes. This includes imposing a military embargo, a comprehensive military embargo, whereby you don't send weapons to Israel, but you also don't import weapons from Israel, and you don't allow the transit of weapons to Israel. And I think this is very relevant to Ireland, where Shannon Airport continues to be used without any transparency for the transport of US weapons to Israel. This is in violation of Ireland's obligations under international law. And the S in BDS is basically building the people pressure and the people power to ensure that the Irish government and other governments around the world are held accountable for violating their own obligations under international law. Part of the campaigns, and this is kind of coming to really the crux of what we want to kind of put forward today and discuss. One of the campaigns, the global campaigns that the BDS promotes and invites people, organizations, institutions to join, is the apartheid-free zones. And from its name, it has a spatial concept, the zone. So the zone can be a library, could be a school, a university, a shop, an art center, a barber shop, small, big businesses. So the space in which you are, in the space in which you live, in which you work, in which you study, to ensure that it is free of Israel's apartheid, meaning that there are no direct or indirect links to Israel's apartheid, that there's no complicity, direct or indirect, in Israel's apartheid. That means that this space would be free from companies that are complicit in Israeli apartheid. To give an example, there's a campaign to boycott Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been providing drinks to Israeli soldiers while they're carrying out the genocide. This genocide is live streamed by the perpetrators, by these soldiers who are carrying out these crimes. And in many of the pictures that they're carrying, they take of them carrying the crime, you see them drinking Coca-Cola. In the places where the Israeli genocide army has left areas in Gaza, Gazans have come back to their homes to see a lot of trash there, and a lot of this trash was also Coca-Cola, and there was a call then from Gaza to boycott Coca-Cola because of this support to the Israeli genocidal army. But also, Coca-Cola owns and operates a factory in one of the illegal settlements not far away from here towards Jerusalem called Atarot, which is on Palestinian land, stolen Palestinian land, and settlements under international law are a war crime. And therefore, the company here, the Israeli one, it's called Central Bottling Company, is profiting from the crime, and therefore the brand and the company itself must be held accountable for this. And I mentioned Coca-Cola, just as to give an example, as an apartheid-free zone, where it may be a restaurant or a cafe that then commits to be free from apartheid, and that means then it would not have the products of companies that are complicit in Israeli crimes, or products coming from Israel, for example. Academic institutions could ensure by having an apartheid-free zone is that they don't have links to Israeli academic institutions, which are part and parcel and a core, actually, part of the apartheid regime, supporting with research, the military and security, equipment and strategies and so on that are tested on Palestinians and then sold to other markets around the world. An apartheid-free zone is thinking of a space as free of all of that, free of a relation of complicity, free of dealings and interactions that actually may harm the Palestinians. So it's kind of a spatial concept, but it's also a journey, meaning that those institutions, shops, and businesses, cultural spaces, and so on that want to become apartheid-free zones can do this kind of gradually and grow. So a space can declare an intention to become an apartheid-free zone, but it doesn't have to basically happen immediately. This commitment can be translated and step by step, basically that institution, business, or cultural center, and so on, can ensure that it frees that space from any links or complicity with Israel's apartheid. But it's also a journey in the sense that we see it expanding. So if a school commits to become an apartheid-free zone, it means that it would not, for example, contract or procure from companies that are complicit, like HP, as we mentioned. But then it would try to also have the neighborhood in which it exists as becoming apartheid-free zone. And then the neighborhood can also, once it frees itself of complicity in Israel's apartheid, also try to see how it can grow to then the larger community, and the community to basically the bigger one, and so on and so forth. So if you imagine it as a journey of kind of a small space that is freed from apartheid, and then basically also gradually growing until eventually, and this is the objective and the hope, that the country ends fully any and all forms of complicity in Israel's crimes of apartheid and genocide. So it's a journey. It starts with a commitment, and then the complete freeing of any kind of complicity, and then continuing on to basically grow further and further and further, and until all forms of complicity are achieved. We have many in Ireland spaces that have been declared apartheid-free zone, but it's also a global campaign. It is growing, and we have recently announced apartheid-free zones in a number of countries across the global south. You can check it out on our Instagram page or our website. You'll find them in Mozambique, in South Africa, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Mexico. And of course, here I was mentioning Ireland and Italy and other places where there is an expansion of this. So among the number of actions and campaigns that you could take, supporting, for example, the boycott campaigns targeting companies that are complicit, supporting the divestment campaigns to ensure that companies, funds, and so on, including, for example, pension funds, are not invested in any way in Israel, or companies that are complicit in Israeli crimes, or putting the pressure on governments to uphold their obligations under international law and impose sanctions on Israel. There is the campaign of our apartheid-free zone, where you're very much looking locally to your own space, your own location, and your own community, and seeing where are these complicit relations and how can I end them, and by ending them declare that we have basically liberated this space, this Irish space, a school or university and so on, from being complicit in Israeli apartheid. Let me stop here and see if there are any questions. I'm happy to answer, whether it is about the situation in the West Bank, in Gaza, inside of Israel, or about the BDS, or particularly about the apartheid-free zone. And again, thanks very much for having me.
Yes, so Salah, thank you so much. What a comprehensive overview of BDS. But I'm just going to come back, if you don't mind, please, to, you're very, it's very striking. You're here. Can I just point out to people that right now it's actually, well, it's 8:30, so it's 10:30 in you're 2 hours ahead of us there in Ramallah. And just how you describe the lived reality for Palestinians in the West Bank, and explaining to your children, whereas watching right now, our mothers, fathers, and our children have such an inherent sense of fairness. It's quite simple, and it is simple. Apartheid is simple, and I suppose we understand that very well in Ireland, given our history. And but I just want to come back, sorry, to a question in relation to, our complicity. And it was made very clear last July. Boycott, divest, and sanctions, as you said, grounded in international law, and Israel is currently committing crimes under international law. And the question is here from what are the likely outcomes of a guilty verdict by the ICJ in the genocide case? And conversely, what are the consequences of a not guilty verdict?
Well, thanks for the question. And it is a great question, because even before reaching a verdict, what the ICJ, International Court of Justice, did was confirm the risk of genocide. Now, under international law, states and duty bearers, if you want, more generally, including international organizations, once the risk of genocide has been identified, and here it is identified by the highest judicial body of the world. There's no higher judicial body than the International Court of Justice. Once the risk has been identified, then there is an obligation to prevent genocide. So we don't have to wait until the ICJ comes with a verdict of, yes, Israel is guilty of apartheid, or no, Israel is not guilty of apartheid. Right now, what the ICJ has done is said that there is a plausibility of genocide. And under the Genocide Convention, there is an obligation now on Ireland to ensure that it does everything in its power to ensure that this genocide is prevented and it does not happen. So this is all in the context of basically the ICJ ruling and the jurisdiction. What does preventing the risk of genocide mean? It means that you, as a country, review and ensure that there is no relation that is contributing in any way to Israel's commission of the crime of genocide. And this can basically go from recognizing and having diplomatic relations with Israel as it's carrying out these crimes, to, for example, sending it weapons, buying weapons from it, and therefore contributing to the war chest, transiting weapons to it. And this is something that we've highlighted, particularly in the case of Ireland, although also Ireland, there is the issue of the export of dual-use items. So these are items that can be used both for civilian purposes, but also for military purposes. That Ireland has a responsibility, an obligation under international law to ensure that it is stopping Israel from committing a genocide. This is all based on what the ICJ has said. Now, while the ICJ is considering the case, you have determinations of genocide that have come from human rights organizations like Amnesty International, putting a very extensive report in December, documenting Israel's genocide, documenting Israel's intention of genocide, both in the statements of politicians, but also the actions in the world. You have UN committees like the Committee to Investigate Israeli Practices in the Occupied Palestinian Territories that has concluded that Israel is committing genocide. You have other UN mechanisms like special independent experts, the Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. Francesca Albanese have put forward 2 reports to the UN, one to the Human Rights Council and the other one to the General Assembly, also concluding that Israel is committing genocide and actually providing an analysis of how this genocide is part and parcel of settler colonial, Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine that intends on eliminating the entirety of the indigenous Palestinians and replacing it with a colonized a Jewish society with a Jewish supremacist system. So you have a lot of documentation from the human rights organizations and bodies around the world, that of Palestinians as well. And you now have this case at the International Court of Justice, which may take a few years, but looking at the ruling of provisional measures by the court in January and then repeating again at different times of 2024, the risk of genocide has been flagged by the highest judicial body, and this entails obligations by states and I think very important to note, according to genocide and international law experts, having the power to prevent genocide, but not doing so is criminal. It includes in it the criminal liability of not preventing genocide. So if here in this case, the court has flagged the risk of genocide, Ireland knows that there are US weapons that are being transited through its territory, sovereign territory, to Israel to be used in genocide and apartheid and else, and has not been doing so. This entails criminal liability. The same applies, by the way, to companies. If a company is invested in Israel that has dealings with Israeli companies, military companies, security companies, but others that are complicit in Israel's genocide, apartheid, and so on, and has not taken action to end this complicity, to ensure that it's not aiding and assisting, that incurs criminal liability, including of individuals. So members of the company's board, the CEO, knowing that the ICJ has flagged the risk of genocide, they have a relationship with Israel and contribute to Israel's crime and have not done anything about it. This in itself, not preventing genocide, is in itself a criminal action. So thanks very much for the question, because we don't have to get to the ICJ's determination in whatever time. We have to deal with what is right now. There are conclusions that Israel is committing apartheid by the highest human rights body around the world, both in the UN and in civil society. But the court has confirmed the plausibility of genocide. What we have to do now is ensure that there is in any way, any form of complicity by states, institutions, and corporations in the crimes that are being committed by Israel.
Yeah, thank you, Salah. And you're very up to speed on Ireland and our deep, deep complicity. And I suppose that's why we literally have hundreds and thousands of people out marching, at vigils, at demonstrations, It's just the movement is getting bigger and bigger here all the time, but it's just, one thing I do want to just bring your attention to, if you could talk a little bit about, please, because just yesterday we had Simon Harris basically declaring, the world must do more, deflecting out into this space, when in actual fact, there is so much we can do here. And as you are aware of, the Occupied Territories Bill is something that they have promised for years they would enact. And before the government was dissolved, they said they would do. And then they made a promise as part of their programme of government that they would make it a priority within the first 100 days. This didn't happen. And instead of, making it a priority, if they really are, put your money where your mouth is, I judge somebody by their actions, not by their words. And so, as you say, we're deeply complicit in terms of international law and the rulings, and that clarity came, it was clear beforehand, but we were very clear last July, and that was given to the government very, very great. But goods and services, they basically, they want to water it down, and we were calling for the Occupied Territories Bill to include goods and services. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, please, and how important the Occupied Territories Bill is?
Yeah, thank you for this. It is it's really mind-boggling that we are still talking about this. The Occupied Territories Bill was proposed way before the International Court of Justice came out with the advisory opinion last year in July to say that Israel's entire presence in the occupied Palestinian territories is illegal and should end as rapidly as possible. The UN General Assembly then voted overwhelmingly to adopt the ICJ advisory opinion and this conclusion, and ordered Israel to end its occupation within 12 months. We're coming to September, and there's no way that this is going to end. But in both the ICJ advisory opinion laid out the obligations on first states, such as Ireland, not to recognize an illegal situation and to ensure that it is not rendering any aid and assistance to this illegal situation. How does aid and assistance look like? It could be the direct support, like the US, Germany, and the UK are doing by basically arming Israel and continuously arming Israel. But it could be with trading with Israel. It could be, as you say, the products and services that are being sold and traded between Israel and where Israel does not differentiate between the occupied territories and the settlements, and then what it considers to be Israel proper at all. And there is no way of telling. Israel has an obligation that has been laid out very clearly by the International Court of Justice that, if you take it, is basically embodied in the Occupied Territories Bill, right? But yet here we are. It's been years since that bill has been proposed. It's been debated. It's been questioned. It's been challenged. And now we have this ruling by the highest judicial body, and yet the government does not take the actions that are required. And I can't stress this enough. This is not discretionary. This is a requirement under international law. And you should be more empowered, more confident that you now have a ruling from the highest judicial body that says that the legislation that has been proposed to ensure that there is no trade dealing, whether it is in goods and services with the occupied territories, you have this backing by the highest judicial body, yet we see Ireland and the Irish government not going this step to ensure that these obligations are translated into legislation and measures and so on. And the only reason I see this is a hypocrisy and double standards, right? That and a hypocrisy and double standards that not only hurt Palestinians, because we are the first victims of this, when the rule of law is not applied across the board equally, when Israel is set above international law by Ireland and by other states in the global north, we as Palestinians suffer because Israel is able to continue with its crimes with impunity, with nobody stopping it. Now reaching the stage of a genocide in Gaza. We have here in the West Bank, where I'm speaking to you from, we have the highest number of killings, including of children, by Israel in any single period since 1967. We have more tens of thousands of Palestinians forcibly displaced out of their homes in refugee camps. So they're made refugees again and forcibly displaced again. the largest number since 1967, the largest annexation of land since 1967, and so on and so forth. And the reason why Israel is able to continue this is because it is set above international law. It's because countries like Ireland continue to protect it from accountability under international law. Palestinians are the first victim, but at the same time, the second victim is the system of international law, of human rights that has been put in place since the Second World War to ensure that the horrors of the Second World War, the genocide against the Jews, the Roma, and others, the war crimes that has seen millions of people lose their lives, are not repeated again. Mm. This entire system is now undermined by actions such as those from Ireland, the UK, other European states, the US, by keeping Israel shielded from accountability and keeping it as an exception to the world. So applying basically international law selectively, it applies to, for example, Russia and Ukraine, it applies to Myanmar, it applies to Sudan, for example, but it would not apply to the Palestinians because of the Israeli exception and setting it above international law. And this must be an Irish interest. And this must be an interest of the Irish government. The integrity of the rule of law, of international law, the integrity of the multilateral system that is based on this rule of law is an interest of all. And if we don't do that, and this is what the US and Israel genocidal axis are doing, is ushering in an era of might makes right. So if you have the power and you have the ability and the means, you can do whatever you want. And if there are smaller nations or communities or smaller countries that dare to stand up and challenge the injustice and the oppression, they'll be wiped out. So Gaza becomes a rehearsal for all of this. Israel is getting away with genocide. And if Israel gets away with genocide, because countries like Ireland are not taking actions that uphold their obligations under international law, that means genocide becomes the order of the day. And this rehearsal would be repeated anywhere where anybody would stand and try to challenge the powerful. This must be an interest to everyone, not only an interest of solidarity, not only an interest of standing by the Palestinians and for the Palestinians. This is important. It's an ethical imperative. It's a legal imperative. But there is also a national interest here that also must be preserved, that we need the system of the rule of law, of human rights, of equality for all and for everybody, all nation states to be treated the same under this rule of law. And by making Israel an exception here, in the case of Ireland, they're basically also undermining that.
Yeah, I mean, and that is an excellent point that you've made, Salah, that the second victim, of course, it's yeah, and we are where we are today, because there has been no sanctions, and the undermining of international law, protecting the integrity of international law is so important. There's another question just coming on, moving it back to BDS, Salah, and someone is just questioning here that I find it, which I'm loving the honesty of this. I find it quite unwieldy sometimes. Is there any guidance into how you could be more strategic?
So BDS does not have kind of wholesale lists of all those who are complicit for you to boycott. The BDS movement does not do these kind of large lists of boycott. What we do is targeted campaigning. So if you visit our website, it's bdsmovement.net, you'll see that there are a select number of campaigns that the BDS movement has initiated and started. This includes, for example, HP, Dell, another tech company. It includes AXA, the insurance company. It includes, so you'll see the number of kind of campaigns. You'll see what we call kind of pressure campaigns and then organic campaigns. These are campaigns that have been started organically by people around the world and have been adopted by the BDS movement. It's very select, it's very few. And the reason why we do this is because we believe that the more targeted we are, the more impact we're able to achieve. That if you give people very long lists of all these companies that are boycottable because of their complicity, and trust me, there are many. The lists can be very extensive. but that makes people feel powerless, and that makes the action be much weaker. Instead of all coming together on select few targets where we're able to achieve results and achieve wins, we're able to build on these wins further. But if we spread all this energy across uh, big lists of boycottable companies, that we're not able to achieve this. And I'll give you an example. One of our recent successes was the campaign to boycott the sportswear company Puma because of its complicity in sponsoring Israeli apartheid teams and the Israel Football Association. The campaign was launched in 2018 and 2023 after massive pressure of grassroots action, including sports clubs, athletes, and so on and so forth, that Puma decided to end its contract with Israeli teams. There was a large gap where there was no other sponsor coming in to sponsor the Israeli Football Association and team. Unfortunately, now we have Reebok that has come to replace Puma, and now there is a campaign to boycott Reebok because of this complicity. But to say that Reebok right now is very nervous, and we know this for a fact. You see how they're behaving, for example, online in terms of kind of the posts. When the campaign was launched, they shut down any conversation on their social media pages and so on. So they already kind of feel the heat. And what we're telling them is that you will face the same fate as Puma. You'll have people all around the world working to boycott you until, like Puma, you leave and end your complicity in Israel. We're targeted here. So targeting Puma and having it as one of the select few targets allowed us to achieve this success. Carrefour is another example of a big chain French supermarket that eventually, that in Jordan, we managed to shut down completely. Carrefour left Jordan because of BDS campaigning there. This is not to say that there are no other similar companies to Carrefour and Puma who are not complicit. There are. But if we give all the kind of the full lists, people may feel a bit overwhelmed. They may feel that no action will have an impact, and all the actions will be spread across. But what we do is we focus on targeted campaigns, and this way we're able to see an impact. So please, look at the website, bdsmovement.net. Look at our campaigns page at the website. You can see a select number of those. You'll see what is relevant to your own context, what is important also for you, where you feel that you're able to contribute, and please do join that campaign, and you'll see that on the long run there are successes that we're able to build on for then more and more accountability to achieve with complicit companies and eventually accountability for Israel.
Yeah, thank you, Salah. That's, the focus targets and campaign. And I suppose, this is bringing me on to the next question in terms of HP and AXA. And within AXA, we've had quite a bit of divestment too. So we mightn't be completely there. We thought we were there last summer, but we've another little bit to go yet. But it's the power of the collective strategic action, really, isn't it? There's a lovely question here that's just bringing us nicely into the apartheid-free zones piece. So it's what advice in terms of initial steps would Salah give teachers who'd like to start the process of making their school an apartheid-free zone?
So, it's coming together as a first step, and examining the place in which you are working and living. This is the most kind of crucial first step, is to look at what complicity links exist in where you work. This includes, for example, procurement from the companies that the BDS movement has been targeting for boycott, or direct relations with Israel and Israeli companies. So if you are in a school that, of course, has, equipment like laptops, and I keep coming back to that example because I think it clarifies, I hope, kind of the campaign and then the intention behind it is, if the school equipment is HP or Dell, for example, and the school has a contract with Dell or HP for this equipment, it would be great, of course, if that contract is broken. This is very difficult to do. But then by announcing that you're committing to an apartheid-free zone, what you're doing is you're ensuring that when the contract expires and you need a new one, that no contract is given to Dell and HP in this case because of their complicity in Israel. The company would know that. Their image and brand will hurt. They get the message, and also they will pay for it economically. As small as it is, this can grow. So if a school starts by freeing itself from tech companies that are complicit like Dell and HP, it can grow to more, and it can grow outside of the school and so on. But it starts with getting together, saying that we want to announce this space as an apartheid-free zone. What does this mean? Is that we look around, we kind of do a little bit of an exposing and research of where are these complicit links, and then studying how we're able to end these links of complicity in a way that is appropriate to the context. Again, calling, kind of stressing that this is a journey, that you don't have to be absolutely free immediately from, all links of complicity once you announce being an apartheid-free zone. You commit to a journey, and you start with whatever is possible to kind of basically grow it and free the space as you go.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept, the journey, because it doesn't feel so unwieldy. And, I think, again, we come back to the word apartheid. In Ireland, we do understand that word so historically. So it's just, yeah, that commitment, that process. And part of our logo, Salah, was, stand up, speak out. And you have given us so much that when we have stood up and when we've spoken out, all the actions collectively we can do together. And yeah, so I just want to bring people's attention just to that, bdsmovement.net again for more information. And I'm wearing a t-shirt tonight. Actually, you can't probably see it too well, but it's a lot of the logos. And our friend Jen designed that in Bad Ads, and we put the link in our bio as well. So Salah, thank you so much for such an informative evening. All the way from Ramallah, we feel so privileged and honoured. Thank you so much. And again, just the way we say, Míle buíochas, 1,000 thanks to you, Shukran Ktir. And just, I suppose, to finish, to remind, just to say thank you to everybody, to keep sending in all the wonderful activities that you're doing in schools. We've had lots of storytelling, lots of creative arts to do kites and flags and marches, dressing up days in the Palestinian colours. And it's so wonderful because, for any of us who know Palestinians, they love life. We've some lovely videos of dabkas linking into the primary curriculum and the dance strand. And I'm loving how yalla, you're all having such fun because that's true, Salah, isn't it? Palestinians, you love life. And not to be glib about the horrors that your families and what is happening in the West Bank. We need to keep eyes on the West Bank, but in Gaza too. But, it gives hope is resistance too, Salah, isn't it?
Absolutely. And no, thank you. It's always good to be among Irish family, and there's very few people around the world that Palestinians call family, and the Irish are one of them. So thanks for and the solidarity is very much felt. It's super important. Yes, nothing that any of us here at home or abroad is doing is able to meet what is required to stop a genocide until now, but we're getting there. We're building incrementally, and this is what is at the heart of the BDS movement, is the theory that only through people power that we're able to achieve the change towards justice, freedom, and equality that we want. And so thank you. Continue to organize, continue to mobilize, and continue to BDS. And yeah, really always great to be among you.
Okay, so Shukran Ktir, Salah. And, as we often chant, nobody's free until Palestine is free. So hashtag let's keep talking. Let's talk about Palestine.